Stigmata, or stigmatics, people who express the same wounds that Jesus Christ endured on the cross, that supernaturally manifest on their physical body. Is stigmata a real phenomenon from the divine, or is there more of a natural explanation? The truth may surprise you. Since the movie about Italian saint Padre Pio is coming out this month, and he's the most well-known stigmatic, I think we should take a closer look at this. Stigmata, supernatural wounds appearing out of nowhere, it's all happening. 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 Welcome back to my channel. I am Carlos Santiago. This is the second part of my Stigmata series. If you have not yet seen part 1, it is highly recommended that you do to get clear context of this video and my views on stigmata. But if you're all caught up, then let's carry on. Today, I am taking a closer look at Italian friar and priest Saint Padre Pio, born May 25th, 1887, and died September 23rd, 1968. I don't want to expound too much on his life, but I do want to go over some notable supernatural aspects. He was involved in the Catholic Church at a very young age. By age 5, he already claimed to have seen angels, demons, and saintly figures. He was also very sickly growing up. In 1918, he said he was meditating on the suffering of Jesus Christ on the cross after a mass service, and he said a figure appeared to him in a vision. This figure was dripping blood from his side, hands, and feet. He believed this figure to be Jesus Christ. Padre Pio details this account to his spiritual director, Father Benedetto de San Marco. This is an excerpt of the letter in regards to his vision of Christ. His suffering was apparent, as was his desire to join souls to his passion. He invited me to let his pains enter into me and meditate on them, and at the same time concern myself with the salvation of others. Following this, I felt full of compassion for the Lord's pains, and I asked him what I could do. I heard this voice: "I will unite you with my passion." And after this, the vision disappeared. I came back to myself. My reason returned, and I saw these signs from which blood flowed. Before this, I did not have these. Shortly after this vision, he began manifesting signs of stigmata. The first wound appeared on his side, mirroring the stab wound that Jesus endured on the cross. Following that, wounds appeared on both sides of his hands and feet, but the wounds never fully healed, nor got infected, and they remained until his dying day, which they miraculously disappeared. But more on that in a bit. Padre Pio gained a lot of attention from his stigmata wounds. People from all over would come to see him at his church mass. Padre's spiritual gifts also started to manifest. He healed many people, including the blind and cripples, even through the sharing of his personal garments or items of clothing. He casted out demons. He even was reported to have the gift of bilocation. This means he was able to appear in more than one place at the same time. What is interesting about these stories is the times that Pio seems to traverse time and space, he does it while he is napping. So he may appear to be napping at one location, but then he appears at another location during that same time period. There are a few accounts of this happening and people at the different locations to corroborate this. And of course, with this kind of attention comes trouble. And if it can happen to Jesus, it can happen to anyone showing supernatural gifts. Padre Pio was the source of controversy, from sexual allegations of him sleeping with 2 women a week to faking his wounds, so much so that he had to stop doing public mass and confessions. But eventually, he was granted back to the church public hours, but it took 2 full years. There were so many allegations against him, calling him a fraud. Could Padre Pio faked his stigmata? Well, of course he could have, but likely could not have done it alone or without others close to him knowing about it unless they were all in on it. There are claims that a lady named Maria DeVito, cousin of a local pharmacist, obtaining bottles of carbolic acid and Veritrain and giving them to him. These ingredients used on the skin certainly could have caused the wounds. However, when confronted about it, Padre Pio said the church had their own supply for cleaning medical equipment, but he wanted his own supply for various reasons. So could Padre Pio have used the acid to burn both sides of his hands and feet to create his own stigmata? Well, yes, but for 50 years? I can't imagine anyone willing to torture themselves like that to feel special or gain some kind of notoriety for that length of time. But who knows? He certainly had his share of skeptics. And yes, he also did have a few medical doctors examine him. Some doctors didn't know how the stigmata wounds appeared, but one doctor said his wounds looked self-inflicted. So there are certainly contradictions to both sides. Iodine was found in Padre Pio's room when he died. That was used to treat the wounds, but I'm not sure that that would work for that many years on open wounds. But I'm no expert in that field. So here's the fascinating part. The archbishop who viewed Padre Pio's body 40 years after it was exhumed from his crypt, they took him out of his grave, and the archbishop said that he saw no visible signs of any stigmata or sores on his hands or feet. Matter of fact, he said Padre Pio looked like he just had a manicure. His body was very well kept and in good shape, and had less wounds than when he died. Padre Pio's body is on display today at the Santa Maria del Grazie Church in Italy, where 7 million people from around the world visit each year. In my last video, I talked about the majority of people with stigmata do not have accompanying spiritual gifts, like healing the sick or prophecy. A lot of the people who weren't part of the church felt burdened by stigmata, and I'm not sure it did a whole lot for them. Matter of fact, the lady Heather Woods, who I discussed in part 1 of this series, was confused about how or why she got stigmata. She even had spirits of some sort channeled through her and write mystical texts and obscure religious art. She thought that she would ultimately find out the reason why she got stigmata and what it meant. Well, she never did. She died with cancer. St. Francis, who was the first documented stigmatic, died blind and had a severe form of chlamydia. Padre Pio, he died from a heart attack. I realize we all have to die in some fashion, but my point is, having stigmata did not seem to help them or save them from curses, disease, or death of this world. Matter of fact, I know St. Padre Pio said Jesus wanted him to suffer like he did so he can share the same compassion, but with all due respect, I do not agree with that. Jesus didn't want him to suffer. Jesus didn't want you to suffer. The whole purpose of him taking the beating on the whipping post and dying on the cross was to take on the suffering and release us from our sins, sickness, and diseases. It was part of the atonement. He suffered so we didn't have to. I appreciate Padre Pio's interpretation of what his vision showed him, and it is extremely noble, but I have a hard time believing that Jesus wanted him to suffer like that, especially for that length of time. So just to be clear, God didn't put a sickness on you. Your lifestyle, sins, opening yourself up to the devil, or possibly even a curse caused your sickness. So let me ask you a question. If you think that God put a sickness on you, why would you go to the doctor or take medicine to get rid of it? Wouldn't that be disrespectful of what God supposedly gave you? God's will was always to heal. When Jesus walked the earth, he never said it was better for someone to remain sick or that someone's character is being perfected through sickness. For that reason, I have a hard time believing Christ wants anyone to have ongoing suffering with stigmata. It obviously happens, but why? I'm not sure. And for a majority of the people that get it, it seems to be more of a curse than blessing. For full context, definitely check out part 1 of this series. So what do you guys think? Is stigmata a holy blessing from God? Or is it actually a curse of some sort from something more unholy? I don't have the answers.